Good morning. Good morning. Hello.
Morning. We couldn't hear you this morning because we had our volume down.
Oh, that's all right. I thought it was my end of it.
No, it was ours this morning.
Cool. How are y'all doing today?
Not too bad. Still trying to get over
Good.
this cold or sickness or whatever it is. We both of us got it.
Jasmine, did Jasmine share her deal with you, or was
I
she
think
not
so. I think
selfish
we
with her
both.
cold or sickness?
I think we both got the same thing.
Jasmine, maybe you ought to be a little bit more selfish with those
No, I gotta share.
things. Well, I got an email from Keith. He's not going to be here today, so uh, it'll be you two guys. Uh, Before we get started, uh, we've got it's on the end of March is on us, and we have just a few weeks left of class. So please get your assignments in. And
Hi, good morning.
hey, Tom.
One thing I need to mention right quick is Southside does not have any classes next Thursday. Because we're doing an
Okay,
advising registration kind of thing, so we won't be having any classes then.
that's next Thursday. That's not this Thursday, right?
Yeah, next Thursday, the 6th.
Okay.
I think it's the date. Yep, the
All
6th.
right.
All the more
Okay
reason to
then.
get everything in early.
All right. So we won't have class next Thursday. We will have class this Thursday. Um, so if you guys would be, go ahead and finish up your assignments and get that out of the way um, for y'all. Because as the end of the semester rolls around, I know you've got a lot of projects. Aaron, you've got your animal production project to do as well. Um, you're taking that class online, correct?
Yes, I am.
And we'll have a test in there next week. I was thinking about having it next Thursday, but uh, probably what I'll do is just stick that on Blackboard and let you go to the testing center and take it. That way, Tom won't have to grade it or try to get the exams to you. And so I'll try to get that done this week. The other thing um, is, we're ending up on the end of the semester in there. So if you can send me what you have on your project, let me take a look at it to make sure you're plugging along. Jasmine has really been, I'll have to brag on her. She's really been doing a good job on hers. I'm looking forward to see the whole thing put together. Uh, so anyway, if you have any questions on that, please get up with me. And make sure you watch those class videos. We've discussed quite a bit in depth about reproduction and genetics and stuff that's going to be on this next exam. So anyway, enough of that. Uh, have you? I noticed you haven't taken the second exam in here yet, uh, and there's a couple other students that haven't taken the second exam. So please get that taken care of. Uh, Jasmine, you took yours, right? Took yours yesterday?
No, I'm taking it today.
Oh, today. Okay. Then it must have been the other online student
I
uh,
forgot all of
that took it with your last name. So, okay. So if y'all could get that taken care of, uh, I'd appreciate it as well. Now, I was going to go over chapter 12 today, interacting with employees. Um, and it talks a lot about interpersonal skills. But I was doing some research and I came across an article and I kind of wanted to divert to this article about why good employees leave. And I think this kind of pertains, or it ties in a lot to what we've been talking about with the with supervisory power. And we spend a lot of time doing that, talking about supervisory power. And so this article is in Business Insider. I just came across it on the internet. I hadn't heard of it. But the article is 9 things bosses do that make great employees quit. And a guy named Travis Bradbury wrote it. And it was originally posted on LinkedIn. But it's a fairly interesting article. You know, after reading it, uh, it talks, and how it pertains, I think, to supervisory power. Because we talked a lot about the qualities of supervisors and their jobs and how they have to walk that fine line between management and employees. Um, and when there's a lot of turnover, managers, according to this article, managers tend to blame the turnover problems on everything except ignoring the crux of the matter. And according to Mr. Bradbury here, uh, people don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. And so this article is trying to put a new perspective on the managers, getting the managers to look at things on a different perspective and put a little effort into retaining those employees. And the other day, I don't know if you guys caught it, Keith was talking about, we were talking about hiring the right people. All right, and he was talking about the company he worked for would put about $30,000 to $40,000 in on hiring somebody, if I heard him correct. Was that right, Tom?
I can't remember the number.
It was, I thought, an exorbitant amount. So, they went to that company went to pretty great lengths to make sure they hired the right people. And you heard him talk about some of the mind games and stuff they would play on the potential employees.
Which one thing before I forget it, my wife saw something the other day. She told me one of these weird interview questions. They asked somebody, if you could be an animal, what animal would best describe you? And this person said, I'd be a turtle because I'm slow and I don't really like to do a whole lot. Needless to say, that person didn't get the job.
No, that would not be a good answer if you ever asked that question.
Yep, but sometimes there's little loopy questions. They can find you out.
Or, don't use that reasoning because I'm slow and don't like to do a lot. If you use turtle, I guess you'd have to put a positive spin on it. So that, I may be slow, but I'm steady and I get accomplished what I'm going at. And I don't know how much people want to hear that you're slow. I know with horse training, I know with working livestock, dealing with animals, The slower you go, the faster you get there. So that sounds crazy, but uh, that's the truth. You know, any of us that ever worked cattle before, Tom, I know you have. Aaron, you dealt much with cattle?
No, sir, I haven't really dealt much with cattle.
Or sheep? Working sheep or cattle or anything like that?
No, sir, I haven't.
Okay. I didn't know if you had or not. But Tom, I think Tom will back me up on this. The slower you are working cattle and putting yourself in the correct body position for their line of flight, you'll get a quicker response from those cattle.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not saying you have to be quick at times, but just being slow and deliberate in all your movements, things go smoother and faster than if you're out there cowboying them and running around and a hooping and a hollering. And it's the same thing with training horses. You get more accomplished the slower you go than than rushing them. So sometimes slow is good. Uh, it all depends on what the situation is. Thanks for sharing that, Tom.
Yep.
So these 9 things that managers do that cause people to leave them, what what do you think they are? What's some of your guesses? And we've talked about these in class, or just about most of them in class. There's a couple on here that we hadn't covered. Unfortunately, Aaron and Jasmine, you don't have Keith here to bail you out today. Uh,
They could probably put too much work on them.
okay, that's number 1. Thanks
Pay
for
also.
Okay, pay. Um, let's talk about the first one, and then we'll talk about pay. Uh, they overwork their good employees. Uh, how many of you guys have experienced that or have seen it happen?
I'm experiencing that now at my job.
I figured you were.
Yeah, because we can't
That's
we
why
can't keep
I
nobody.
asked. I specifically asked that question because I had that impression that's what you were going through.
Yep,
Um,
she can't keep nobody, and they don't offer no raises or anything. It's pretty bad.
yeah. Now, the Jasmine, have you experienced that or seen that yet?
No, not yet. But I got
Okay.
yelled at yesterday because I was sick and didn't show up for work last week. So I'm about tired of that job now.
Okay. Uh, so let's talk about overworking people. What's There's nothing that burns out a good employee quicker than overworking them. And from a manager standpoint, that employee, your best employee, you can always count on them. No matter what, you know they'll be there. You know they'll get that job done. Right?
Right.
But I think sometimes that fact is overlooked that they have to have their personal space, their own personal time, and not overwork them. it, when you're overworking good employees, he says it's very perplexing. It makes them feel as if they're being punished for great performance. And overworking is also counterproductive. Some research out of Stanford shows that the productivity per hour declines sharply when the work week exceeds 50 hours a week. And then productivity drops off so much after 55 hours that you don't get anything out of working them anymore. Wow. I did not know that. Did you, Tom?
Yes. Not the specific percentages, but I mean I knew there's a huge drop off on overtime.
Yeah. Uh, the this is an ag class, an ag program. If you've worked in the ag industry, there's no 40-hour weeks. I'm just being blunt with you. There's no holidays. Actually, there are holidays. You eat better, you get to see some family members, but the work's still there. Because the cattle, take Christmas for instance. All your feeding still has to be done. It's the dead of winter. And there's no grass. Everything has to be fed. Uh, and I can guarantee you that since it's a holiday and you're wanting just to get your feeding done and spend the time with your family, something will break down. It's just a given. It's Murphy's Law. At least Murphy's on my shoulders. I don't know about you, Tom, on your farm.
Oh yeah, me and Mr. Murphy. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, it's, that's just the way it is on life on the farm. The other thing, thinking about hours you pull on a farm or in production agriculture, there's a saying that says, uh, when the sun's shining, or you got to make hay when the sun's shining. And you can take that literally. In the summertime, uh, and you're doing hay production, and if the weather's permitting, you're in that hay field. Uh, if in the wintertime or in the spring, depending on your calving schedule, your lambing schedule, you're laying with those animals. I don't know how many times, how many nights I've been up watching cows, and especially first calf. Not so much cows, but first calf heifers. We would uh, we checked them about every 2 hours around the clock, and so if you had night duty for about 3 or 4 days, and then somebody else, and then you still worked all day long, uh, and then somebody else would do the night duty for 3 or 4 days. So you run on little sleep, and you know how you get cranky when you don't get enough sleep. Jasmine, I'm gonna pick on you because I know my wife does.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do.
I do too. Uh, you just kind of seem a little bit more irritable. Now, when it's your own farm, you don't have anybody else to alternate out with you. And so, my own first calf heifers, uh, yeah, I was up every 2 hours checking on them for about a month. So I got them all calved out. And then still had to still did what I had to get done during the daytime. So, farming, if you're running a farm, you better keep this thing in mind. Because the reason I left Stewart Landing Cattle Company is that number one reason. I was overworked. My manager, and I knew going into it, there's going to be times that you have things go on a bit further. But it was that way year round. Everything went well that week. We took Saturday, we'd work half a day on Saturday. All the feeding was done. I'd go off somewhere and my boss would run me down to go pick up a part for next week or whatever it was. I never could get away from it. But granted, I was a manager. It's part of my deal. But it's nothing unusual for me to get a phone call on Sunday morning telling me to go over to one of the other farms to go through those cows because those cowboys are drunk and hungover. That was just the way it was. And I kind of got tired of it. And then the kicker of it, and this was a bad part on me, this was one of the mistakes that I regret, was the boss, Zan Stewart, got into this trail riding mode. All the big wigs of the county would get together on Sundays and go trail riding on different people's farms. Guess what I had to do on Sundays? On Saturdays, I had to make sure all the horses had shoes on because if people didn't have horses, we supplied horses for them. The Saturday, after we finished our half day of work, I spent the rest of the half day replacing horseshoes or making shoeing horses or replacing shoes that were lost. Sunday, I was going around the different farms, loading up the horses, tacking them up, loading them up, then going on an all-day trail ride, then going back home, or putting all the horses back at their respective farms. I regret that because that was a good way for me to network with the big wigs of the county. Because I got out of it every chance I could. I'm not going to lie to you. It was just like, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. It's summertime. We don't work on Sundays. We're not having to feed. I want a day off. And I guess I was looking at it in a very selfish way instead of a way of looking to further my career by getting to know the big wigs of the county. So that is one of my regrets, but that is the main reason I left Stewart. So overworking your employees, I guess we killed that from there. Number two is what, now Aaron said pay is the second reason. Pay, let's just go with rewards, okay? Whether it's pay or a sincere recognition for a job well done. So when, employees are giving it their all, they need to be recognized. Either give them more pay or some type of recognition. And as a manager, you need to figure out what is it that makes your employees tick. Is it do they want pay? Do they want promotions? Do they want a title? Do they just want that pat on the back? What is it that gives them that drive? And we need to recognize that and reward their good work. Recognize their contribution. Third reason people choose. Okay, Aaron stepped out. Jasmine, y'all hit the first two. What do you think number three would be?
not respecting their employees.
Boy, y'all are right on. I must have done something right this semester. Y'all are hitting these right on. Number 3, you say don't respect their employees.
Yes.
He has it phrased a little different, but it's the same thing. The managers don't care about their employees. Same thing as not respecting them. They don't care. So make sure you show respect and care and empathy to your employees. What about the next one? Any ideas? Since Aaron left you high and dry, stepped out on you. I'll help you out here. Next one is that they don't honor their commitments. You remember how we were talking about trust with the
Yes.
manager? That you've got to have trust with your employees, and if you break that trust, it's very hard to get it back. You don't ever want to break that trust. That's the 4th reason people leave. The managers don't honor their commitments. So, making promises to people places you on the fine line that lies between making them very happy and watching them walk out the door. So when you uphold a commitment, you grow in the eyes of your employees because you prove yourself to be trustworthy and honorable. And remember, those are 2 important qualities that we talked about: trustworthiness, honor. Well, we didn't talk about honor, but we talked a lot about trustworthiness. And when you disregard your commitment, you come across as a slimy, uncaring, and disrespectful person. And nobody wants to work for that type of person. Would you agree?
I agree.
So, looking at it, flipping the coin over, if the boss doesn't honor their commitments, why should they expect somebody else to honor theirs? Right? Going back with that follow through that we talked about with effective meetings and stuff like that, if it's not important enough for the managers to follow through with stuff or to honor their own commitments, they don't need to expect the employees to do it. It's that simple. So if you don't honor your commitment as a manager, don't be expecting your employees to do it. They're going to follow your example because you're the leader.
If I can jump in for a second,
You bet.
going back to the recognition piece. One of the English professors here, she's put in her notice she's going to leave here, and she's actually going to go and teach at the school where her daughter goes. And she has been teaching here a year longer than me, so probably like 14 years. And she was walking around, she was telling me this story. She's walking around on the Keysville campus a couple of weeks ago, and the president of the college walked up to her, and he walked up to her and he's like, I'm a little bit at a loss, for words what to say. I'm struggling with the loss of you leaving here. And he's trying to be nice, her leaving this college, because she is a great teacher, and her leaving this college, it's going to have an impact on the college. That's what he's trying to say.
Right.
But then, after he walked away and all, she's like, well, that's nice, but you probably should have been telling me that kind of stuff before I'm heading out the door. He's been president for the college for like 3 years, and, apparently he, she didn't.
Everybody everybody's going to stay there, no matter what the college
Yeah,
does.
and if you recognize that somebody's doing some important contributions to the place and doing good work and that kind of stuff, just the whole, you're doing a great job, and I'm not just saying that. I'm hearing from the street. I'm hearing that you're doing a good job. That honest recognition that your boss knows what you're doing, they're paying attention to what you're doing, and they appreciate what you're doing, and then they let you know that from time to time. That can be huge. But so many of us, we're like trundling along. I'm sure Aaron, the way he's talking, he probably would say this about his job. It's like, they're just like, get back to work. We got too much work, and you know, did they actually
Right.
realize all the stuff that he's doing on a job, and are they actually recognizing him, and are they actually thanking him and saying you're doing a good job, and I appreciate you doing these 40, 50, 82 hours a week that you're doing? How great would he feel from that? But this is an English professor with a master's degree, and she's still feeling the same way, neglected.
And, the sad thing is, right now, Tom, I don't know about your college, but I think it's going to get worse because they just announced, at least for us, another round of cuts, budget cuts.
Yeah, we had that too, and they just let some people go a week ago here. And that's part of the thing. It's like, our president, we can't fault him because he's only been our president for a couple of years now, and he came in in the middle of this huge enrollment downturn and budget stuff, so his mind is on, keeping the ship afloat and keeping it driving, and so, he's, the whole going down there and giving somebody a pat on the shoulder, pat on the back kind of thing is like, it's unfortunately down on his list of priorities. He runs out of time in the day before doing it, but it still is important for the workers to get. And it is going to get worse.
And, and, like with our president and our administration here, I think they try to do a good job, but, they've got to answer to the chancellor and the VCCS system. So, they've got, it's a tough job between trying to do what the community college system tells them to do and managing the people and keeping enrollment up and slashing the budget because of state mandate budget cuts. It's not easy. And, sometimes things may not be handled properly. Sometimes they may be, and it's just hard decisions they have to make. But, I don't know. I'm not trying to defend anybody or criticize them. It's just a tough decision. And, wherever, if you're ever in a situation like that as a manager with budget cuts, you want to try to keep your best employees. And the time to be telling them how good they are is not after they give you your notice. You need to be, let them know beforehand. Because as an employee, when there's budget cuts, I don't know how Tom feels. Tom may be different than me, but I'm looking. I'm out looking for another job. I'm going to take care of Dwayne. I'm not,
Yes.
when I was
Back,
with Extension, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm probably going to tell a similar story to you. But when I was working for Conseco Finance 15 years ago, we ended up declaring bankruptcy while I was there. And I'm like, I should have seen the signs a little bit earlier. But I'd only been with the company for a few months, so that was a little bit my excuse. But if you start noticing that your middle management and upper level management, they're starting to take jobs elsewhere, and you got more people leaving than coming in, it's time to fire up your resume and start looking elsewhere.
Yeah,
I made that decision. I made that decision then, so I keep my resume current, so I'm ready to roll no matter what.
Yeah, and I'm always looking. I mean, that may not be good, or it may be good. I don't know. Uh, you know, I'll look around. I'll submit a resume. If I'm happy where I'm at, I'll still see what's out there, see if it's any better, or see if it looks better, and I may or may not submit a resume. But I keep mine up to date. Uh, when I took the job with Extension, about 6 months after I started, here comes the budget cuts, and they're talking about letting go people. And new hire, first to come, first to go. So, I started looking, uh, and it turned out I think there was a buyout, and which a retired extension agent said, "Oh, Dwayne, don't worry about it. They'll do a buyout. Your job's safe." And he was right. They did buyouts, and my job was safe. But it ended up during the time I was looking that things transpired with this teaching position, and I'd already set the wheels in motion, and it gave me a chance to get back to the farm, and so I came back here. But uh, yeah, rewarding is important. Thanks, Tom. Uh, the fifth one that he mentions here is that managers don't hire and promote the right people. They hire and promote the wrong people. Uh, Good, hardworking employees want to work with like-minded professionals. When managers don't do the hard work of hiring good people, it's a major demotivator for those that stuck working alongside of them. Promoting the wrong people is even worse. When you work your tail off only to get passed over for promotion is given to someone who glad-handed their way to the top. It's a massive insult. It makes good people want to leave. Now,
Amen, brother.
yeah, he says it really nice. Now, I don't know about you guys. How many of y'all, if Aaron's back in the room, it's frustrating working with somebody and you're having to do your work and their work too. You ever been there? You had to do that yet? Jasmine?
I
Tom,
haven't.
I know you have.
I do it
Yeah,
every day.
yep, I've been there, done that, and I'm doing a little of it here now, but
And I would tend to think Aaron's doing that quite a bit now, right, Aaron?
Yes, sir. I've been doing that for quite a while.
Yeah. So, just going over these things here and applying it to Aaron's situation, I think his manager may be on the verge of leaving of having a good employee walk out because there's no recognition for Aaron's work. He's worked several hours, being overworked. Um, and so, the top two reasons people leave: overwork, no recognition. And then now he's having to, work alongside people that probably shouldn't be there to begin with, or gets passed over on promotions. And I'm not, I know I cut on the state jobs some, and I've worked a lot in the state system. I've seen it, and I don't know why this is. And I've worked in the federal government. I've seen it in the federal government. It's like when somebody gets in trouble, they do something wrong. Instead of disciplining that employee or possibly getting rid of them, they promote them and get them out of that office. You ever seen that happen, Tom?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. I mean, then the federal government and the state government are the worst. I don't know how much it happens in private industry, but in government, it's like they don't want to fire anybody, so they'll just promote them and put them in an office by themselves. And my gosh, that's disheartening. You know, when you're working your butt off and somebody does something that, in my mind, they probably should have been fired over or demoted or at least had a good tongue lashing, they get promoted. They get more money and get sent off somewhere else. And, you know, and now all of a sudden, you know, a few years down the road, they're your boss. And you're like, really? You know, it's disheartening. So if you're in a manager situation, and you know, we've we've talked a lot in depth about the hiring process. Make sure you hire the right people. And we talked a lot about promotions and, you know, doing trial periods that doesn't work out, let them go back. Guys, hiring the wrong people and definitely promoting the wrong people will make good people leave. It discourages. The sixth, number six, we haven't talked about at all. So I know you're not going to guess this one. But the managers don't let the good employees or any of the employees pursue their passions. Um, and you know, let me just tell you. Let me just read what he writes. It'll make I can't explain it very well. Talented employees are passionate. Providing opportunities for them to pursue their passions improves their productivity and job satisfaction. But many managers want people to work within a little box. These managers feel that productivity will decline if they let people expand their focus and pursue their passions. This fear is unfounded. Studies show that people who are able to pursue their passions at work experience flow, a euphoric state of mind that is 5 times more productive than the norm. So, I don't know, to me, and Tom, you can speak up if I interpret that wrong. You know, good employees, you know, they've got that drive, and some of them think outside the box. And that outside the box thinking, sometimes that really works, you know, of making changes to make things more productive or whatever it may be. Uh, you know, am I interpreting that right, Tom? Do you want to comment on that or not?
Uh, yeah. You think outside the box really helps, but unfortunately, you got to be. You can't. I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't go too far outside the box sometimes, because then if you go too far outside the box, then you may have some managers that think that you're being critical of their thinking and the way things are done and that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, you got that political element in there. But which when I was working at Conseco, there was a couple of workflow things that we were doing here again 15 years ago, 20. We're working on this stuff, and I looked at my boss. I'm like, there's a better way to do this. If you give me about half a day, I can come up with something. And my boss Kevin, he's like, okay, and he gave me half a day. he was doing what I normally would do so I could have a half a day, and I built this thing in Excel that did 3 things at one time. And so had a half a day to do it, and then by using that tool for the remainder of the day, I actually caught up and did the whole day's worth of work too. But he was willing to give, and I was thinking outside the box. There's another way to do this, and he was willing to go outside the box and let me do it, and it improved the productivity of our whole department. But I wasn't going too crazy though. But it helps because your boss doesn't have all your answers. So it's good to have that creativity and to encourage it from your workers.
And that's a good statement you made just there. Sometimes the boss doesn't have all the answers, and remember that if you're in a manager position, you can learn as much from your employees as you do your supervisors. Your good employees can teach you a lot. Now, the 7th reason people leave, and we've talked about this. If you think back, beginning of the semester, one of our first few lectures, that employees expect from employers is to develop their skills over time. That's the 7th reason why people leave. The managers fail to develop the people's skills. Good managers manage no matter how talented the employee. They pay attention and are constantly listening and giving feedback. Management may have a beginning, but it certainly has no end. When you have a talented employee, it's up to you to keep finding areas in which they can improve and expand their skill set. The most talented employees want feedback, more so than the less talented ones. And it's your job to keep it coming. If you don't, your best people will get bored and complacent, and they'll leave. So develop the people skills. Keep them challenged. Number 8, again, we haven't talked about this one, but they fail to engage their creativity. So allow your employees to get creative within the boundaries of their job. Um, going back to thinking outside the box a little bit. And then lastly, the employers or the managers fail to challenge people intellectually. Great bosses challenge their employees to accomplish things that seem inconceivable at first. Instead of setting mundane, incremental goals, they set lofty goals that push people out of their comfort zones. And then the good managers do everything in their power to help them succeed. So when talented and intelligent people find themselves doing things that are too easy or boring, they seek other jobs that will challenge their intellects. So in conclusion, if you want your best people to stay, you need to think carefully about how you treat them. While good employees are tough as nails, their talent gives them an abundance of options, and you need to make them want to work for you. So I thought that was a pretty interesting article because it talked, we talked a lot about these things. A few of them we didn't talk about, but I thought it kind of wraps up or puts into perspective a lot of the things that we discussed throughout the semester. What's y'all's thoughts on that? Would y'all find it interesting, boring, or do you think it was spot on with what we've talked about? Or am I just missing the boat thinking that myself?
I think it was about spot on with what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I thought so. Um, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Um, and just kind of bringing in some different material to talk about. And hopefully seeing this, I know I've lectured you guys all semester about this stuff, but I think, to me, when I saw this article, I thought, I need to share this, because what I've been talking about, they're actually talking about this in a real world situation, or it's reaffirming what I've been trying to tell you guys. So, you don't think I'm just sitting up here just to hear myself talk. So, uh, any questions or comments on that? Okay. All right. Uh, if not, we'll move on. We'll start chapter 12. We've got a few minutes, about 15, 20 minutes. Chapter 12 talks about interacting with employees. Now, we kind of look at, you know, to me, this is is a very important chapter of the book, because it's not only pertains to our professional lives with interacting with employees, but it pertains a lot with their personal lives as well, incorporating some of these principles in our personal lives and our personal relationships with friends, spouses, coworkers. Um, so I think it's a really good chapter, and I highly encourage you guys to read this to read this chapter. I want you to read the whole book, but this chapter I think is really good. Uh, Now we've talked a lot about supervisors, right? Uh, we mentioned that effective supervisors, they don't they try not to show favoritism. They treat everybody the same. They make they often make difficult and unpopular decisions. They try to show concern for their employees, but try not to pry. That's tough. I mean, you know, and I know there's a differences in sexes with this. Like, the other day, a buddy of mine called me, and he was feeling pretty down and wanted to talk, and I just let him talk, and I didn't try to pry and see what I was going on. I was just letting him talk, and would try to ask questions at the appropriate times, pertinent questions at the appropriate times, but I wasn't trying to pry into his business. Does that make sense? And so I was telling my wife about that, and she said, "Well, didn't you ask this question? Didn't you ask this question? Didn't you try to find out what, more details?" And I thought, no, I thought that would be pretty nosy. You know, I figured he'd tell me what he wanted me to know, but I wasn't, but I wasn't going to try to find out more. So, females, I think, will dig a little bit deeper. Guys, I don't think typically do. Uh, but you do want to show concern, but you don't want to try to pry into their business, especially if they don't want to tell you I figure people's going to tell me what they want to tell me, and what they don't want to tell me, it's, they're not wanting to tell me for a reason. So I don't try to pry that out. Effective supervisors also avoid misusing their power, and then they have a good sense of humor, and you've got to have a sense of humor. If you're going to laugh about something 3 or 4 years down the road, you might as well laugh about it when it happens. No need to get all up in the air when something happens, and a couple months down the road, it's going to be huge. So, have a good sense of humor. Now, there's a couple definitions you guys need to be aware of with this. Basic human interactions. There's two of them. One of them's called a stroke. Any idea what a stroke is when it comes to human interaction and not the medical term with the oxygen being cut off from the brain?
I don't know.
All right. That's fair. A stroke is a verbal or physical way to acknowledge a person's value. So typically in American society, how do we do that? Hello, Jasmine. How are you today? Is that a stroke? I'm verbally acknowledging
Yeah.
your value, asking about how you're doing, correct?
Yeah.
What about a handshake? Would that be a stroke?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a physical way to acknowledge a person's value. Now, the second definition is a ritual. A ritual is the mutual exchange of strokes, reciprocal validation of each person's worth. So, the ritual would be I offer my hand to shake, offer my hand, say, "Hey, Aaron, it's good to see you today," and I extend my hand to shake his hand, and Aaron says, "Hey, Dwayne, I'm doing fine. How are you?" And he grabs my hand and we shake hands. That's the ritual because he returns that stroke. Make sense?
Yes.
How important are strokes and rituals to us?
Very important.
Yeah, it's pretty important. Jasmine, if you said, "Hey, Dwayne, how are you doing?" and I just keep walking right past you and didn't acknowledge you, how would that make you feel?
A little mad.
Yeah, a little mad. Now, if you knew me better and you know that I can't halfway here, it probably wouldn't bother you as bad, would it?
No.
Or, well, let me rephrase it. If we passed and you made eye contact and you said something to me, yeah, it'd make you mad. But if I was a couple people away on the sidewalk and looking at my emails on my phone or something, and you said something and I didn't acknowledge you, you'd say, "That old man can't hear. I ain't worried about it. His mind's distracted and he can't hear me," and you wouldn't think anything about it, right?
Right.
But, you know, we make eye contact and you're pretty sure I heard you, you would be mad. And that's the way everybody would feel. We have to have, as individuals, we need those strokes. And if I extended that stroke to to Aaron, hey, Aaron, how are you today? And extended my hand to shake, and he just ignored me, I would feel pretty bad. That cold shoulder it doesn't feel very well, does it?
No.
No, it doesn't. So, and the need for personal validation is great. Okay. And it's so great that even the point of negative attention is better than none. Now, how many of us have seen that negative attention of somebody wanting attention, even though it's negative? They're doing what they got to do to get attention. We've all seen it.
Yeah.
Kids, we've all been around kids before, right? And we've been kids. And when we want mommy and daddy's attention, we're going to get it. Whether it's good attention or bad attention, we're going to get it, right?
Yes, I was having flashbacks to teaching in the middle school there.
Mr. Scales, Mr. Scales, Mr. Scales.
No, it's more the things being thrown around and the cuss words being thrown around and just all the bad behavior.
Yeah.
No,
So,
no, I'm gonna be over you. I'm gonna be over you crying for the next few minutes.
so we don't give attention. The other people may try to do negative attention to get attention. All right. So personal validation is great. Don't ever underestimate that. Now, the opposite of that personal validation I just told you is a cold shoulder. It's just ignoring that stroke or ignoring that individual. And that doesn't have good consequences, you know. Nobody likes to be shrugged off. Now, when we talk with people, uh, the tones that we use in our voices, the inflections, it can it can mean different things, right? Y'all agree?
Yes.
Although we can say the same, we can say a line, we could say a phrase, and that phrase, it could be positive, it could be neutral, or it could be, shows that we're interested, right? It all depends on the tone of voice and where we place the inflections. Or it could even be, it can also be a negative type tone, right? So it could be positive,
Right.
negative, neutral, or we actually show interest. So the tone of our voice can go a long way. Uh, and I find myself with that, you know, and Tom, I don't know, I can't speak for Tom, but Tom can relate. Uh, my wife, one of the first things I learned when I got married, the two words that you need to know when you get married, and Aaron, listen up, perk up those ears, is yes, dear. Right, Tom?
Actually, I found there's two phrases that you use them independently or you use them together. And that's all you need. Yes, you're right, and I'm sorry. That's pretty much all I need. Yes, you're right,
Well,
and I'm sorry.
that's correct. I'm sorry. I haven't used the phrase "yes, you're right" a whole lot. I do
Give it
use it.
for the
Don't get
fun
me
of
wrong.
it.
I do use it.
Yeah, for the fun of it, give it a shot. You can hold a 20-minute long conversation with your wife using only those two answers, and it would be
Right.
a somewhat appropriate answer for anything or everything that she says. I am a
I
truly
found
broken
I can
man.
do that with "yes, dear." Yep. Yes, dear.
Yep, which that
I
follows
guess you're
along with the
right.
yes,
I
you're
have
right.
used that a lot. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yes, dear. Yes, you're right.
Yep, it's part of that total surrender thing. My
Yeah,
wife truly
yeah,
has me where she wants me.
that's right. My dad says any happily married man's henpecked, and I'm happily married. Yes, dear.
Yes.
Yes, dear. But, depending on how I say that, that can come across as positive. It can come across as I'm interested. It can come across as a neutral, or it can come across as a bad way. Uh, all by how my inflections and the tone of my voice. So, you know, I'll give you another instance. I won't use my wife in this one. It was that job I took back in the fall. Uh, I messed up. I left a book. We'd been traveling around, swapping hotel rooms, swapping vehicles, and I left my manual that they gave me with the sales, with all their products and stuff. I left it in another vehicle, and my manager chewed me out for it. I mean, you'd have thought that was the worst mistake I could make. He used swear words. He just went off. And then he told me, well, after he finished speaking, he looked at me and he said, I don't need another, use the F bomb, screw up, working for me. Only he used the F word instead of screw. And I looked at him. Now I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie about it. And I was thinking, I don't need this. All I did was leave a notebook in a truck that I was just in, and it's not a big deal. And I'm not going to back down from this guy. I'm not going to cower down and say I'm sorry. I'm going to stand my ground right here. Whether that was right or wrong, it's what I did. And I looked him square in the eye and I said, yes, sir. Just like that. 2 words, mostly meant, most times, yes, sir, is taken with respect. But the tone of voice I used, by looking him in the eye, it was not meant as a respect. And he knew it, and I knew it. And I thought he was going to come across that car and wring my neck, literally, because he started to come across. And I took a physical defensive position. I moved my leg back and twisted my body so I'd be kind of at an angle. So if I had to deliver a blow, I could put my body in behind it, or if I had to duck or move out of the way, I could, instead of having broad at him coming right at me. And it was a stare down, and I didn't back down a lick. And had there not been a car between us, I think he would have come after me. Uh, but uh, I, I really didn't know how to handle that situation. That was the first thing come to my mind, because you know I was pretty ticked. Needless to say, that was my last day. I was done. Uh, and he couldn't understand why. I told him I quit. He goes, I don't understand why. And I said, well, seeing how you treat your employees and talk about your other employees, this isn't a place for me to work. But anyway, tones can make a big difference. So be aware of that. My wife gets on to me a lot about that. My dad did too when I was growing up. Uh, my tone of voice. So, uh, so be aware on how the tones and inflections on what you're saying and how they can be interpreted. Because a lot of times, things that we intend aren't interpreted the way we intended. Uh, if, you know, what I'm trying to say sometimes comes across wrong or is misinterpreted. Um, and that happens to everybody. It happens with my wife. It happens with you guys. Sometimes what I'm trying to teach it comes across wrong. It just happens. But we have to be aware of that, and we have to be very careful, especially when we're working with people of the opposite sex, because they can take that as sexual harassment. And that's not good. The other way people can interpret things from what we intend is that air of superiority. We're coming off as we're being superior to you. And that doesn't go over as well. That doesn't go over well either. Right?
Right.
Y'all agree or disagree?
Agree.
So, we got to be careful on how we say things, uh, and the way people intend. Sometimes how we intend, they're not interpreted the way that we intend for them to be interpreted. Has that ever happened to you, Aaron or Jasmine, or is it just me? Which I know the answer to that. I'm trying to get you guys to speak up.
I don't think it's happened to me.
Really?
I
What
don't.
about you, Aaron?
Well, I can't recall a time.
You ever said or done anything and you meant one thing, but somebody else interpreted it differently?
Oh yeah, many a times. That's kind of how it works in southern states. You tell them one thing and they take it totally different.
Yeah, when I was a county extension agent and people would call or, you know, they'd ask, hey, what rate do I use this pesticide or how much fertilizer? And, you sit there and you do the math, you double check your math and, you read the directions and do the math, you double check it to make sure you're telling them right and you tell them and then it's frustrating because sometimes it feels like you're just talking to a wall because they'll repeat it back to you, but they'll repeat double or triple or not enough, you know, uh, which that's just misinterpretation altogether or not paying attention. I don't know which, but anyway, uh, but it happens. It happens all the time. But be careful. You don't want to come across that you're sexually harassing somebody or you're trying to be that air of superiority. Nothing turns off people quicker than that air of superiority. Now, what kind of another thing that we have to deal with in interacting with their employees are cultural barriers. Um, what do I mean by cultural barriers? Y'all have any idea?
I'm not really sure.
I guess like it could be like their religions could prevent them from doing stuff.
Okay, their beliefs or
Yeah.
religious beliefs could come into play there. But let's, thinking in agriculture, um, sometimes it's just language, right? We have a lot of migrant or Hispanic workers in in this profession. So language can be a barrier or a cultural barrier of just being able to communicate with them, or the way things are interpreted. Um, what about manners? People have different manners. Yeah, they do. Uh, you take a look at people from foreign countries, they have different manners than what we have here in the United States. You take people from different parts of the country, they they have different manners than what we have here in southwestern Virginia or in the South Side. And y'all see that a lot with people moving in from the north, right?
Yes.
Even though it's the same country, a few hundred miles away, sometimes they're like foreigners, aren't they?
Yes. I have family that lives near Baltimore, Maryland, and it's completely different.
Yeah, that's a cultural barrier. Even, some of the words that they use is completely different than what we use, right? Or their sayings. My wife is from
Yes.
Philly. She, and I'll say sayings that are just typical that we use around here. And she'll look at me and say, "What's that mean? Where'd you come up with that?" And it's just a saying that we always use. And I can't give you an example off the top of my head, but um, that's an example because there's a lot of cultural barriers between my wife and I. Her being from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a big city, and me being from southwestern Virginia. We have words that are different meanings for the same word, sayings that we use, uh, manners. Her manners are different than mine. She's very prim and proper. I'm not, but when I'm out, I try to be, use a fork and a spoon. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what forks I'm supposed to use with each dish, but she keeps me straight. Uh, but like like visiting people, okay, down here, in southwestern Virginia. Hey, we want to go see somebody. We just go over there to their house, right? Is it the same way in Southside? If they're home, they're home.
Most of the time, yeah.
If they're
Yeah.
busy, oh, that's not a big deal. I'll come back another day, right?
Yeah.
That irritates my wife to no end. People just swing by. And she's like, "Don't people call first?" And I said, "Not here, they don't. You just swing by. They're home, they're home. They're busy, they're busy. It's no offense. They're not going to be offended if we can't spend time with them because we're getting ready to walk out the door or we're in the middle of something. It's just the way the manners are in southwestern Virginia. But up north, you don't go to somebody's house unexpectedly. You give them a call, or at least that's the way she was raised. So, you know, different manners. Uh, and then if you're dealing with people from other countries, uh, you have the language thrown in there as well of being able to communicate with them. So uh, it makes things challenging interacting with other people, interacting with your employees. We'll pick up. We're out of time. Appreciate you guys coming today and appreciate your participation. And I hope you enjoyed class. So, uh, y'all have a good rest of the day. And uh, take a break before Tom's class.
Smoke them if you got them.
Stretch your legs. Tom, thanks for your contribution today. I appreciate it.
No problem. That's part of why I'm here, I guess. It's just hard for me to sit here and keep my mouth shut, I guess. That may be it.
Oh, that's not a problem. I don't mind. I'm glad. It's nice to have a different perspective. I miss John too, because John sheds a lot of stories and insights from his experiences. I wish Keith was here today, because I'd like to have his version and his insights on that article.
Yeah.
I tell you
Which
what, now that he sure brings a lot of a completely different dimension to the class. I really like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah,
His
and
stories
just
and experiences.
he does for you what he does for me. When he's talking about something, it reminds me of experiences that I've had 10, 15, 20 years ago that I've like forgotten or suppressed the memories or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting he keeps coming up with all these mind games they would play on their potential employees.
Yes.
Golly, dang. Or the one, when we were talking about that personality test, he said, well, you know what they're looking for, Dwayne? They're looking for a leader. I'm thinking, well, that was probably his way of saying he wouldn't have hired me.
Yes.
I didn't want to be that lead actor in the play.
Yeah. That personality test I took years ago, I mean, it pointed out I did not have the aggressive, assertive personality I needed in order to be a salesperson. And
Yeah.
and just in retrospect, I'm like, I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know how well I would have done feed sales had they not, had it been a good company to work for.
Yes,
I would have
I
liked
was.
to have thought I'd have been good at it, but I don't think I would have been that aggressive type salesman. I think it's more like I would have been more like my extension agent role of going out there and talking to people and getting to know them and building that trust and telling them about my product and where I think it could help them out a little bit.
Yeah, and that would be the way I would approach it, and I probably wouldn't get the sales that I needed to feed my family. And oops.
Right. Because, I'm not trying to say I'm intelligent or know a lot more, but the products they had, it wasn't anything spectacular. You could go to southern states and buy a product, maybe the same product or a very similar product, and it would just boil down to price. And so I don't know. I might not have been good at it either.
Yeah.
Because I probably would have been, hey, this is the same product Southern State sells, and they're $10 cheaper a ton.
Yes, that's where I would have gotten in trouble.
Probably hurt me on
Uh-huh.
that.
Yep.
So, but at the same time, I know this guy. He has a feed mill up in Withville, Farmers Milling, there outside of Withville.
Okay.
And that guy's just brutally honest. Tuffy Walters, I was there one day as a county extension agent. I'd go there quite a bit because they really sponsored a lot of my programs, and they're just good people. And we worked together on stuff. He'd call me, say, hey, I got this. Can you come over here? We need to talk about Farmer Joe's feeding regime or something. And, I'd send off a sample of what he was feeding. And I remember he came back, that farmer came back, and me and Tuffy had discussed this. And Tuffy took the lead. He just says, well, Joe, you don't need to be buying any feed right now from me. because I was in a boat because this guy had some really good feeding, and I didn't really want to hurt Tuffy's feelings by not promoting his feed, but I needed to be honest with that farmer and saying, hey, what you're feeding's meeting all your requirements. But I didn't even get that chance because Tuffy said, hey, you're wasting your money buying any feed from me. Your cows don't need it because here's what you're feeding and here's the nutrient content of it, and you're meeting all their requirements. And that farmer looked at me and goes, what do you think, Dwayne? I said, I think he's exactly right. And he says, well, you just knocked yourself out of some sales, Tuffy. Tuffy said, yeah, I did. But when you need feed, you're going to come back to me. Well, if you
Yes.
need this, you're going to come back to me. And in about 4 months, when your cows calve and your nutrient requirements go up, you're going to need some feed, some additional energy. And this is what we sell that would complement what your feeding regime is right now. And I hope you come back and buy that and then feed this at the rate of 70 pounds a day. Old Farmer Joe went back there. Farmer Joe was a firm believer in he was a loyal customer to Farmer's Milling after that.
Uh-huh.
And that's what needed to be done. He was just honest with him.